believe that the suffering servant, they believe
53 or 63?
53. I'm sorry if I said
53?
53.
He did.
Isaiah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The suffering servant.
Yeah.
Some Jewish people say that that is Israel.
Is Israel.
Yeah. How can we show that that's not Israel?
Yes, they do. And convincing them is not going to be an easy task. And remember what we're up against in dealing with Jewish people. And maybe this is lifting, but when you go to 1 Corinthians, I'm sorry, 2 Corinthians 4. Actually, it's 13. Second Corinthians 3:13. We are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to keep the Israelites from gazing at it while the radiance was fading away. But their minds were dull, for to this day the same veil remains when the old covenant is read. It has not been removed, because only in Christ is it taken away. Even to this day, when Moses, and what does he mean by Moses there?
The first 5 books. Sorry.
Probably not.
The law.
Probably he means the entirety of the Hebrew scriptures. When Moses is read, when the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures are read, a veil covers their heart. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. And he goes on. And I think all you can do is put that together with Psalm 22. Right.
Could bring up Zechariah 14 too, where it says when they realize what they did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They will look upon me whom they have pierced. They will mourn as for an only child. I think you can ask them another question. And this is a good question. Who's the we?
That would be Israel.
Who's the we? He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. Who's the we?
That would be Israel looking at.
Oh no, if Israel's the him, it can't be the we.
Good point.
He was despised and rejected by man, a man of sorrow and familiar with suffering, like one whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Who's the we?
Israel.
He took our infirmities and carried our sorrows, yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted.
They could say that that's the we is the world, because they believe they're the chosen. But
okay, then if that's true, then it says, all we like sheep have gone astray. Here's that we again. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. If that's true, then why hasn't Israel gone to the nations to proclaim that their sins can be forgiven? Why have they failed? If they are the he and not the we,
Then who's the him?
the he or the him, if Israel is the him and not Jesus, why haven't they gone to the Gentiles to proclaim the good news that they have borne their sins? And then you've got to ask them, does Israel have the power to bear the sins of the other nations? Because it says, the Lord has laid on him the iniquity. If the him is Israel. Did God lay all of the sins of the Gentiles on Israel? And you can take here, do you, as a member of Israel, want to carry all the sins of the world? Is that something you think you can do?
Great point. Exactly what I wanted.
And then why did you sacrifice before? You know, there were sacrifices.
Yeah, and why did you even have a temple? If you could carry the sins of others, that would mean that you had the ability to carry sins, which means you couldn't have had any sins of your own.
I think that what you just brought up too about the Gentiles, because where are they with the Gentiles?
Yeah.
It does say in there about bringing it to the Gentiles. That
Yeah.
they never have.
Yeah.
I realize that they do have that veil over their head, because when I talk to them, it's actually worse than talking to just an unsaved Gentile, because they have, as smart as they are, they have no clue whatsoever.
Oh, it has nothing to do with intelligence.
No.
I have debated with professors with PhDs and doctorates of divinity and doctorates of theology and a combination of 3 or 4 of those different things. And they had no more spiritual insight than a rock sitting on the ground.
I send out, I think I told you, I send out a verse every day, and I send it from the Old Testament. And here's what I sent today, and I put a commentary on it, and I put something from the New Testament. Listen what it's real short, and listen what his response was. I put, boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Proverbs 27:1. And I put, in this life, tomorrow is not guaranteed. The Bible teaches that there is an eternity. The New Testament book of Hebrews says, and as it is appointed unto man once to die, but after this, the judgment. Are you prepared for eternity? I sent that to everybody, the 13 Jewish people included. One guy sent me back, can't imagine eternity, but certainly know that there are no guarantees for the next moment.
Yeah.
They just brush right by eternity.
So what you can go back to him with is Ecclesiastes 3. God has placed eternity in the hearts of men. You know inside yourself there is life beyond death. You know there is another life coming. You can try to deny that, but you know it perfectly well. You just don't want to admit it because your own Bible says you do.
That's a great one, and that's what I'll use tomorrow. Matter of fact, I'll,
Make a note now.
yeah. Is that is that 3:20 or something?
No,
It's 11.
11. I always get confused as at 10 or 11.
Perfect.
Anyone else? Did you want to bring up Mabel or did you not want to?
I just thought you might maybe want to read that.
I
Sent you first, but I didn't.
I did read some of it, most of it.
No, I just thought it was interesting because I sent some money back when the Gaza thing first was taking place back in October to Zion's Hope, an organization that is in Israel. They had put out a really good teaching online and stuff about that whole region. And I remember years ago, Bob Innings used to talk about the significance of the red heifer and the fact that they were being bred. And so I got this magazine copy for January, February. I just got around to opening it a couple of days ago. And it talked about how they are now, there's a Christian farmer who is breeding red heifers in Texas. And they work out.
Now, that goes back because they've made that claim for 40 years now.
Yeah, yeah, but they have worked out a system and they have imported some of them over there. And one of the leading terrorists in the Hamas organization, I think he's maybe the military operator or whatever, I don't know, because I don't have my phone with me. But he was apparently going through and, justifying the reasons that Hamas was going after Israel. And he gave a list of the motives, and one of those was that the Jews are now returning red cows to Israel. And that whole prophecy from Numbers 19 talks about the needing to sacrifice and make all of the articles that were in the temple and stuff purified again, so that if they actually have a group that is, dealing with rebuilding the temple, to have it built for a third time now. And it is so set in place, way more than when Bob Iddings was talking about it, and he was real excited about it back then. And I just thought it was real interesting, so I just,
I would say it's more the fourth temple than the third, but
well,
because you have David/Solomon's, you have Ezra/Nehemiah's, and I would count that the temple that, and people argue back and forth, and they say that the temple that Herod was not the same temple that was.
then possibly,
Yeah.
yes, so,
They say the reason they combine them and not say, like say the third, is because the sacrifice would, even though they rebuilt it, the sacrifice was still being done.
It was not, it was broken. Because you had a number of years when there was no sacrifice under the Maccabees. And they had to come back in and and that's the whole festival of Purim. And Hanukkah, yeah.
but don't you think that has some real significance today, or you don't?
Well,
I mean, it's right there.
yeah, I don't, my answer to that is, I don't know how much these, what's the illustration that I've given for prophecy? And it's really important to understand this. What's
To be a present.
But I've given an illustration in the past for prophecy. What is prophecy like? And this is very, very, very important. Because we often go astray when we forget this and try to do something else. Has everybody here been up in a long-range jet plane? Has anybody here not been up in a plane?
I've never,
Never been up.
no, don't plan on it.
When you fly in a plane, what do you see? Sometimes,
You see-
but often you don't.
You see clouds below you.
You see clouds below you. And what can you see about the Earth from up at 40,000 feet or so above the clouds? What can you see?
You can't see anything. Really, it's super small.
What you can see is, if you're going over a plain, if you're going over lowlands, you can see nothing. But all of a sudden you start to see something when you go over mountains. When we flew over the Alps on our way to Israel, you were flying along, and like Europe normally is, it was very cloudy down under us. But all of a sudden, as we're flying over France and there's nothing really to see, we got up over the Alps, and what do you see?
See the peaks?
You see little tiny parts of the mountains sticking up through the clouds. Now, what do you know when you see that? That there are mountains there. What can't you do from that?
Oh,
The
no.
rest of them, yeah.
Draw a road map for how to drive across those mountains. All you see is the peaks. You don't see any of the terrain connecting those peaks one to another. Well, that's the way prophecy is. And so I like to connect prophecy to things that are absolutely connected to the end of the end. I remember when I got saved 50 years ago, and it was almost, next year will be exactly 50 years ago I was saved. So I've been saved 49 years. There was all these, and I can remember all these guys writing books, and you know what they started their books with? There will be wars and rumors of wars, and guess what? 50 years later. But if we'd have gone back 50 years in time,
But it's still hard.
There were then too.
and how about 50 years before that?
Yeah.
And 100 before that, and 1,000 before that. And so Jesus talks about wars and rumors of wars, but what does he say about wars and rumors of wars and nation rising against nation and earthquakes and all these other things? What does he say about that? These are the beginnings of birth pains. These are Braxton Hicks contractions. And what is the case with Braxton Hicks contractions? They don't mean anything. I had Kathy in Bridgeton Hospital, I think 6 different times before Janet was born. And every time they'd kick us out on our backsides and send us home going, no, she's not in labor, go home. So we come to certain prophecies that are absolutely benchmarks scripturally of events happening. What are some of those?
Israel becoming a nation.
Well, not exactly. That is a thing that has to happen to set up with a benchmark. By benchmark, I mean something that is absolutely in black and white connected to this is in and of itself a sign of the absolute end of the end times. Well, one of them is in Matthew 24. And Jesus makes a claim in Matthew 24 about the end of the end of the end. And what does he say? Verse 14.
This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come.
And then the end will come. So it's not, well, these are the beginnings of birth pains. These things will be with you. Here he says, here is a clear-cut event that will happen one time. Because how many times have there been wars and rumors of war?
Many.
Has there ever been a 10-year period on earth where there was not wars and rumors of wars?
No.
So therefore, when we talk about that, we have to come back to, here is a benchmark. How many times has the gospel gone to every single people group? Has that happened over and over and over again?
No.
It has happened how many times? None yet. It's getting very close. But it is an event that has not yet happened. And Jesus says, watch this event, because when this event happens, what does he say will happen? The end will come.
Saying the last person that hears the gospel, is that what you mean?
Well, do you have the cross-reference with that of, what's the cross-reference with that?
Every people who are.
But you should have a cross-reference with it. What's the cross-reference?
Matthew 10:22.
No. Write this in your Bible. Revelation 5:9. Revelation 5:9. Before you turn to Revelation 5:9 and read it, where does Revelation 4 and 5 take place?
After the church is gone,
Where does it take place?
where does Revelation?
4 and 5 take place. What is the scene? If it was a movie, boom, you'd have a scene break. After 3,
In heaven.
in heaven. Who is present in heaven? In Revelation 4 and 5, who is present?
Jesus and John, because John is saying,
Je-
I looked.
Jesus, God the Father, the Holy Spirit, angels, and
The select.
the saints. So this is after the rapture. So at the rapture. Now go to chapter 5, verse 9. What do these people in heaven claim? What is the claim they make in heaven? That's a claim. But keep going. What claim do they make that bears on this?
That he purchased men for God from every tribe.
Ah! At the rapture, not during the tribulation period, not after the 144,000 go out, not after Moses and Elijah return. At the rapture, who goes to heaven? People from every tribe and people group. They translated the word nation. It is not nation. How many nations are there on earth? Well, that all depends on how you define nation. The minimum is about 167. The maximum is about 211. Depending on whether you count places like Gaza as a nation or not, or the West Bank, or the Innu people, the independent province in Canada, or the ones in South Africa as nations or not. That's not what that word nation means. It means people groups, but then it also says something else. Tribes and peoples and
Nation.
Language.
languages. So what that means is a person, at least one person or more people, have to be saved from every single language speaking group on earth, of which there are what? Roughly 6,000. Some of those language groups are only spoken by a few thousand people, but they have to be reached.
Yeah, when we went to Wycliffe a few years ago, they were saying that
Yep.
they still had a lot more languages to translate the Bible into,
Yep.
so.
But they are also saying that they are at the threshold of beginning to translate every language group. What does it take to translate the Bible into a language?
Understanding both languages?
Somebody from that language group who can help them.
You need to have a person who is willing to help, that speaks that language, to the translator translate the Bible into that language, or any other document into that language. That means if they are on the verge of translating every single last language, they have at least access to at least one person who speaks almost every language on earth. And since it is a dangerous thing to help Christians in many parts of the world, what does that imply? That there are people who have faith enough that they're willing to risk their lives. Doesn't sound like unbelievers would be very excited about doing that. So we are getting very, very close to this prophecy that there will be every people group, every tribe, every language at the rapture will have representatives saved. And Jesus says, when this happens, what? The end will come. So I think that's a much more seminal prophecy. Now, there are other prophecies that feed into that, but there's the linchpin that we have to link onto. Let's go to the other one. What is the other big one? Because this defines the end times. This sets the date of the end times.
Verse in Daniel that talks about the abomination, standing in the holy place.
Close, but not yet.
Doesn't that not happen until the middle of the round?
That correct. So it's the beginning of that verse. What is the verse?
In verses, Mabel talking about?
Yeah. These are verses you need to know right off the top of your head. Because these 4 verses are the linchpin of all end times prophecy in both the Old and the New Testament. You cannot understand any prophecy about end times without understanding these 4 verses. What are the 4 verses?
Matthew 24:14.
No,
Revelation 5.
no.
From the issuing of the decree.
Daniel 9:24 to 27. Daniel 9, 24, 25, 26, 27. 4 verses. And those 4 verses give the entire timetable for what God will do from the time of Daniel to the last day before Jesus assumes the throne with the Jewish people. So there's a big gap because God worked with the Gentiles for a couple thousand years in the middle.
Time of Daniel till Jesus takes the throne. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. So what does this say about the end times? Because it starts with from the building of from the decree to go forth and build the temple until the coming of Messiah is 483 years. That was fulfilled when Jesus did what?
Sunday.
Yep, when he walks into Jerusalem to the acclamation that he is king. He fulfills the prophecies, he comes in on a donkey, he does all those things, and the people reject him.
Beginning of that 483 years was Daniel.
Now, it was the decree of Cyrus to go back and rebuild the temple. Where is that talked about? Where do you see that lived out? Ezra and Nehemiah. So from when Cyrus the Great says, Jews, go back and rebuild your temple. From that moment in 440 something BC, 445, 444, something like that, till the time of Jesus was 483 years, and it comes out right to the year. Now you have to do a couple things. You have to measure by 360-day years, not 365-day years. But that's what a Jewish year was. And it comes out to the year Jesus dies. So, then it says, verse 26, after the 483 years, what does it say? Give some more benchmarks. What are the benchmarks?
The temple would be,
Up before you get to the temple. Messiah will be killed. Was Messiah killed after Jesus presented himself as king?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Click off that benchmark. That one's done. What's the next one?
Is that the second benchmark?
Well, that's part, these benchmarks in this scripture here that have, so yes, the first one is to Messiah the King. He presented himself, then he's cut off. Then what happens? Babel.
I'm confused. So the rebuilding of the temple.
Nothing about rebuilding, Jeff. Nothing about rebuilding.
So the first one is Messiah is killed?
No,
Or is
it's the temple. Okay, if you want to say rebuild, but not the rebuilding of the future.
Right.
The one under Cyrus, yes, that's the first thing. Second one is Messiah will be killed.
Okay.
What's the next one? Have a great night.
That the,
Nope, doesn't say that there, does it?
says that they'll destroy the city and the sanctuary.
Ah, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple.
70 AD.
70 AD. Did that happen?
Yes,
Was that after Jesus was presented as king?
yes.
So far we're batting 1,000 here, right?
Yeah.
What's the next one? There's one more here before we go forward.
Abomination.
Nope,
Ending sacrifice
nope,
for that?
yep,
Burning the covenant?
nope.
Oh, just said war will continue.
With the signing of the
Wars.
peace treaty.
There's a-
Wars and desolate, but this is regarding the Jews. What does it say about them? Messiah will come 483 years after that. Messiah will be killed, the temple and the city will be destroyed, and then what?
And
Wars or rumors.
There will be wars and desolations unto the end. So it says there'll be a long period of time between Messiah being appearing and saying, I'm the king, being killed, the city destroyed. There will be a long time, wars and desolations, right?
Yes.
So those are the benchmarks. Have all of them been fulfilled? Did Jesus present himself as Messiah?
yes,
Was Jesus killed?
Yes.
Was the city and sanctuary destroyed?
yes,
Have the Jewish people known wars and desolations from that moment to the present day?
Sure
yes.
have.
All right, so now we've come all the way to that point. How many of those were fulfilled only figuratively?
None of them.
None of them. How many of them were fulfilled literally?
All of them.
Every single one of them. Are we together still here?
Yes.
So now we go forward from our perspective. What's the next thing there?
Signing of the peace treaty.
He will form a covenant. The prince of the people that destroyed the temple will come and will form a covenant with the many. Israel and other nations.
You still on linchpins here or no? It's just like, we did the four linchpins.
They were the four, yeah.
Yeah, they're done,
Okay,
because we haven't seen that yet. Have they formed a covenant?
No.
That will start that last 70th week.
that would be after the rapture, correct?
I believe so. So, what is the part of that peace treaty? Because you have to look forward. What's the next event that will happen after that?
Breaking of it?
What's the next event?
Breaking of it, doesn't.
No.
They'll
The
rebuild
tribulation.
the temple.
But it's right there in Daniel.
Paul just said it, rebuilding the temple.
Doesn't say
That'd
that.
be the end of the sacrifice and offering.
He will put an end to the sacrifices.
That Antichrist,
Yeah, the prince of the people who will
all
come.
this whole things.
The prince of the people who will come will form a covenant with the many. And then in the middle of the 7 years, he will cause the sacrifices to cease. Now that means that Daniel left out one thing in the middle between those two events. And what is that?
Well, the temple had to be rebuilt in order for them to do it.
That the temple will be rebuilt and sacrifices will have to be restarted.
I was like, because they couldn't have done the sacrifices until the temple.
Night.
was built.
Kathy. Right?
Yeah.
Because you can't stop sacrifices that haven't been started. You can't set up an idol in the side of the temple if there's no temple built.
So technically, I was,
Doesn't the red heifer fit into that? Because all
So-
those things have to be pure.
Right, so I would say that all of those, I'm gonna concentrate on the big one, which is, but all of those things are subsidiary prophecies that have to take place to prepare for them.
Would you like start with that stuff again next week and go?
Sure.
Cause it gets to be,
Yeah.
a lot.
Did,
I had it good through the four.
I have the four too.
We're in
and that's
desolation
where-
stuff.
When you, that mixed me up a little bit, like, just
Yeah,
like Mabel said, so if we could start next
yeah,
week.
let's pick up
Yeah,
from there.
with that.
Good
So
point.
remember, that's where we are.
Same bat time, same bat channel, right?
if you do not understand Daniel's prophecy, what is the foundation of Matthew 24 and 25? When you see the abomination standing in the place, so what's Matthew 24 and 25 built on?
Revelation.
Daniel
Daniel
9,
stuff.
20.
Daniel 9:27.
Yeah.
Revelation, what is Revelation?
Daniel 9:24.
It's an extension of.
Well, there was specifically 27. How long does Revelation take place from Revelation 6 to 19? 7 years. Where did that 7 years come from?
So hold that. thought.
The last
Hold that
week
thought.
of Daniel.
Getting it all straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hold the thought.
All right.
God bless. We
Remember
will
what it-
See y'all.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Like Batman's ready to be killed.
Yeah.